to the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission meeting on Wednesday, the 13th of July, 10 a.m. We'll call this meeting to order. Roll call.
Commission members Brown.
Present.
Fuller.
Present.
Capel.
Present.
Greer.
Present.
Harris.
Present.
Chairman Vieira.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, if you join me in rising for the flag salute.
Ready? Begin. I pledge
Thank you.
remain standing.
Please be seated. Before we get started in the meeting today, I'd like to read a quick reminder here with regards to speaker cards, and that is that all speaker cards must be filled out and submitted prior to the agenda item being called. This same rule applies if you wish to speak on non-agendized items at the end of the meeting. Following this process will allow us to conduct a timely and orderly meeting. If cards are submitted on agendized items, we will take public comment after the presentation of each item. So I do have those cards that have been submitted today. If there are more that are forthcoming, please bring them forward as well. And we appreciate your cooperation with that. Okay, public business from the floor, agendized items. Commissioners, you have a chance to take a look at the minutes, and any questions at all on that? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, call for the question.
I need one more vote.
Thank you very much. Okay, Commission staff presentations, updates, reports, monthly crime statistics. Mr. Cobalt.
Thank you, Chairman Vieira. Got some pretty good news today. I think everybody will like it. This measurement period is, last few meetings, our measurement periods have been for 4 weeks. This measurement period was for 6 weeks. Covers the time period from May 29th to July 9th, 2011. Now, this is our normal chart that shows violent crimes and property crimes, total Part 1 crimes, and our arrest information and everything else. Just a couple of things that I really want to point out on this particular slide. This number right here, we've not seen a number like that in Lancaster. That's impressive. We're 40 Part 1 crimes during the, or that we were able to geocode and actually put on a map during the week of the 12th through the 18th of June. We also have a couple of other weeks that are just really impressive as well, which was the week of June 26th through July 2nd, and then we have 2 weeks that were well below our normal average range, and I'll point that out to you in just a minute. But it's incredible to see how things are moving over there. If you take a look at these data, we can see what I was talking about with regard to that. During the June Criminal Justice Commission meeting, our weekly average for Part 1 crimes was 67 with a median of 66.5. During this reporting period for the 6 weeks that are involved here, our weekly average is 60.5 and our weekly median is 62. It's just, it's great. I had to share this map with you because I prepare a map for the city manager and for the mayor every week so that they can see what's going on from a strategic perspective. And this map really caught me off guard. This was for our map for the week of June the 12th through the 18th. And one of the things that you'll notice that's missing up there is red in any of the reporting districts. Since we started tracking crime as a city several years ago, this is the very first week that we've not had a single red reporting district. It's amazing. When we take a look at our most active reporting districts, one of the things that I'd like you to take a look at as I switch over to the map here is we're beginning to see some patterns as we talk about space in the city and relative locations where crime occurs. And I've talked about that before, and I've talked about a few causative factors, but it's interesting to look at how certain spaces continue to kind of pop up in our crime data. Our first reporting district, or our two of our most frequent reporting districts, were 1135 and 1137. If we take a look at those, this is 1135. Now, 1135 is no stranger to us. We've talked about it many times before, but now we're getting to the point that we can start looking at it and saying, well, there are some things involved here. It's not random. Some of these things are occurring in the same place over and over and over again. As we take a look at the hotspot analysis of 1135, we can kind of see some interdependency with other reporting districts, 1137, which is also in the same group. But one of the areas that's in the middle, as we look at this hotspot display, we can see a variety of events occurring along on both sides of Avenue J between 20th Street East and really, if you go almost over here to about 5th Street East. And as you look at this particular layout, it gets to be fairly consistent from week to week, month to month. And so we're able now to start looking at these kinds of things, and these are some of the things that I've shared with Captain Johnson as I send him reports. Is, you know, we're seeing the city of Lancaster covers over 90 square miles, but our actual crime is probably occurring in an area that is probably around 10 miles or less in size. This is 1137, and it's covered or outlined in the blue area here, runs roughly from Challenger Way over to 40th Street East, from J down to Avenue L. And again, you can take a look at it and see where the density of the crime is. Again, we see the red areas up here along Avenue J, and really you can almost take this area from Challenger Way over to 20th Street East, from K up to J, and that's where the highest density of activity is. The next reporting area, the third most active reporting area, was 1126, and you can see that area has a lot of larceny activity going on around it, particularly around Avenue K and 10th Street West. And this area has from a spatial perspective, has a variety of things going on. It's a high commercial area. It has a lot of parking lots. There are a lot of things going on in that area, and it's kind of bordered on two sides by two fairly active apartment complexes. If you take a look at this area over here, these are the apartments along Gadsden, and these are the I believe it's Sunset Ridge Apartments over just a little bit west of the 14. And you can see the activity that almost runs. You can see how this hotter area runs almost just from one apartment complex to the other apartment complex, and that would suggest to us, just looking at it spatially, that there's activity going on from and to and back and forth. at least that area, it seems to be fairly heavily traveled by the folks who are committing the offenses. The other area that we have is up here at 20th Street West and Avenue K, where we can see a lot of or more dense activity as well. The next reporting district was 1132, and again, 1132 kind of shares a area down here with 1135 and 1137, and that is that Challenger Way and Avenue J. There's a lot of activity going on around there, and it also has many of the same issues that the previous intersection we were talking about. There's a lot of parking lots, there's a lot of activity around there, and there's a lot of foot traffic and those kinds of things. And you can see how it extends up into the neighborhood over basically bordered by, let's say maybe Lancaster and down to J, from 5th Street East over to Challenger Way. The other area that we see that has an impact up here is just south of Avenue I and a little bit east of Sierra Highway. And of course, here's 1121. 1121 also outlined by the blue, Sierra Highway over to 20th Street West, Avenue H down to Avenue I. Again, 1121 has a higher density area also that seems to be fairly well centered around 10th Street West and Avenue I, and it extends upward into the neighborhoods. And then finally, the last reporting district of the top 5, which includes a few ties, is 1127. And 1127 basically runs from 20th Street West over to 60th Street West, Avenue I down to Avenue K. Again, if we take a look at that, you can see some spatial relationship moving up into this area from the apartments down here on not Gadsden, but just west of the 14, moving up into the neighborhoods here, and then of course we have the impact of Valley Central Way along this area as well, with the larcenies that are reported there. Then once you get over into the neighborhoods a little bit west of 30th Street West, we have a little density of activity over here just west of 40th Street, but pretty much the neighborhoods are pretty good, or pretty empty as far as Part 1 crimes go over in that area. When we look at the most active areas for residential burglary, which is an area often, or area of concern often for citizens, you can see 1137 led the way with that during this measurement period with 15. 1121 and 35 both had 8 residential burglaries, and 1133 had 7, and 1127 had 5. And then the other one that's driving, or that tends to drive us a little bit, is the larcenies involving vehicles. Now, we have many of the same problems that we've had in the past with this, but one of the things that's kind of interesting is this is a 6-week measurement period, but our frequency or total number is less than it was during the last reporting period for 4 weeks. So even though we might get on the bandwagon and say, you know, we still have work to do, there is some nice data coming out of this as well. Larceny involving vehicles, for vehicle makes, Chevrolets led the way with 7, Hondas with 6, and then we dropped down to Jeeps, Chryslers, and so on. When we start looking at points of entry and force used, again, the disturbing thing is the The activities that are under our own control as citizens are oftentimes the ones that are neglected in these data. We can see 71% of the larcenies involving vehicles involved either unlocked doors, open windows. One of the big problems that we saw in the reports during this reporting period was people are going off during the summertime and leaving their windows cracked. If you think that leaving a 1-inch gap at the top of your window is going to significantly cool the interior of your car in the desert, I'm a little skeptical of that. But the problem is it gives somebody an opportunity to come up and grab hold of the top of that window and force the window down, and that's very evident in the crime data. So the one piece of advice that I would give to citizens out there who might be watching this is roll your windows up all the way. Also, lock your car doors. Some of the objects that folks were after during this reporting period, radios and stereos were the most often taken, followed by cash, GPS devices, credit cards, small electronics. One of the things that this suggests is people may be leaving these things out where people can see them, which serves as a incentive. So again, some of the other advice that we would give to citizens is if you have items like this in your car, don't leave them out in plain view. Put them under the seat, in the trunk, put them in your glove box, but keep them out of view. As far as where these events are occurring, again, if you thought you were immune from this in your residential driveway, the data would suggest otherwise. That's the most frequent place where items are taken from vehicles, followed by public parking lots, residential streets, apartment lots, and commercial streets. So what are we doing within the scope of our 52-week look back with regard to our trends? The crimes that are trending up are, or are still showing an upward trend, include assault. But the interesting thing about this is the reason why we're still showing an upward trend in these data is because of the events that occurred back many weeks ago. If you take a look at the most recent weeks, going back about almost 10 weeks or so, you can see that we're seeing a definite decline in these data, and we should see some results shortly with regard to the linear trend beginning to point downward or at least flat instead of constantly pointing up on this. We see the same thing in residential burglary right now. We had this big spike back about almost 20 weeks ago, and it was impacting our data. And now we're beginning to see that data drop off as well. Larceny, we still see an upward trend in that, and I'm a little bit concerned about it because you can see that there was a week here where we actually got over the baseline. Our baseline for larceny is around a little between 40 and 41 per week, or I guess 41.13, and we were over that for 1 week. As far as grand theft autos, we also have a slight upward trend on that, but you can also see our most recent events are down below the trend line, so we should see some adjustment in that shortly as well. Arson is also trending up a little bit, but again, if you look at the frequency numbers over here, arson is still a very low frequency crime for us. This upward trend line is moving between 1.2 per week and about 1.5 per week, so it's fairly insignificant. Trending flat in homicide and rape. And our downward trends are in robbery. There's a nice downward trend in robbery, and we're staying relatively around 6 per week, which is a good number for us. Now if we go to our maps, you can see the first map that I gave you. During this measurement period, and again, bear in mind this measurement period is for 6 weeks rather than the the normal 4 weeks. So during this 6-week period, we had a total of 363 Part 1 crimes that showed to be geocoded inside our city. 363 Part 1 crimes for 6 weeks. That's not a bad number. We can, compared to where we've been in the past, that's a very positive number. Now, if we take a look at our spatial map up there, this map is a little bit deceiving because this map takes the 6 weeks of the measurement period, the current measurement period, measured against the 4 weeks of the previous measurement period. So it looks like we've got this red density up here, but again, you're adding 2 extra weeks to that, so that kind of explains why we see the red densities up there. And this is our forecast for July. Our forecast for last month was pretty accurate, and again, we can see just about all of the districts that we reported on today as being red and active again during this month as well. So those are areas that we certainly want to pay attention to. As far as repeat calls for service go, you have a map for this, but this is just the list. You can see AV Hospital again led the way with 41 calls for service, but again, you can't really reduce that because these are events where somebody walks into the emergency room and they're required to call the police. The next place was 1301 East Avenue I, Friendly Village Mobile Home Park. They had 25 calls for service during this 4-week measurement period. Again, this is for 4 weeks. We look back 4 weeks on any of our call for service comparisons. The next location was 1731 East Avenue J, or Walmart on the east side of town. They had 20 calls for service, followed by Briarwood Mobile Home Park at 45800 Challenger Way. They had 15 calls for service, followed by Quartz Hill High School with 12 calls for service. Lancaster City Park popped on to calls for service during this reporting period. It was not there previously with 11 calls for service. Lancaster Garden Apartments has been on and off of here at 523 East Lancaster Boulevard with 11 calls for service. A new entry onto here as well is the AM/PM at 918 West Lancaster Boulevard. That had 10 calls for service. And then finally the intersection at Challenger Way and Avenue K, that intersection had 10 calls for service. Most of those are suspicious parties or somebody driving carelessly or those kinds of things. And that pretty much takes care of my report. Do you have questions?
Jim, just a quick question with regards to Quartz Hill High School. Are those calls during that time period primarily the alarms?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jim, I have a question. When we look at the list that you've just got up there now, this group home looks like a single-family residence address, I assume. 16 calls for a single-family residence, even if it's used as a group home. I mean, you look at a number like Walmart with 20. And I know that Walmart, unless I'm wrong, we have one of the representatives here. I know that one of the subcommittees have met with them and seemed to be impressed with what they were trying to do out there and working with the city and working with the AV Sheriff. I look at 20 for a store that size and the number of people in and out at service in that whole east side area, and I see 16 for a home like that. What's the...
This is the second week that this has popped up for us. At least the second week, and I was talking to Mr. Dorico about it last week, and I looked at the calls for service for this particular address, and they appear to be runaways or missing persons. It does not appear to be involving like fights or anything like that. I don't know what screening processes they're using down there to to figure out which kids belong in that home and which ones don't, or which folks belong in that home and which ones don't. I'm not sure if it's a youth facility or if it's an adult facility, but whatever screening process they're using, they probably should look at it, because somebody's walking away from there and then they have to report it, and that's a resource, or that's bogging down the sheriff's department, because when you take a missing person, that's really 2 reports, because at some point in time when you locate them, then there's got to be another report to show that the person has shown back up again.
Well, that news is better than what I hoped I would hear, was the police were called out for conflicts with neighbors or something all the time.
Didn't see much evidence of that. I mean, there might have been 1 or 2 disturbance calls in there, but the vast majority of what appeared, at least in these numbers, were missing persons.
Okay. One of the other questions I had is that it just seems like almost every time we meet and go over these figures, it's most obvious when you look at the list of the most frequent calls. These things tend to gravitate around areas that either have a higher density of residents, be it mobile home parks or apartments, or in some cases, busy, active retail locations like an AM/PM that's open later in the evening, or a large store like a Walmart or something like that.
Yeah, we've talked this over at length with the Sheriff's Department, with our Public Safety Office. I think on the mobile home parks, the big thing that we're looking for right now are repeat calls to specific spaces, and when we get those, the city now has a very active enforcement activity with regard to nuisance calls. And we don't hesitate to act on those locations when we identify them. But I think everybody's pretty much resigned to the fact that if you've got 200 or 300 spaces in a mobile home park, chances are you're probably, even if you don't have repeat calls to the same space, you're probably going to have maybe 15 calls for service to that location in 4 weeks. I think what we're looking for are big variances in the numbers. For example, if we had Briarwood Mobile Home Park on here this month or this week and they had 15, next week they had 30, what's going on there?
And that was the reason for my question. I wondered if there's some other way, a subcategory to track how often these radio cars, I expect that you're going to have cars going out, you've got a couple hundred people in any location, more often than if you have 2 homes in a rural setting on 5 acres. But I just wonder how often these are repeat, I don't want to say repeat offenders, but, there's call for service repeatedly, same unit number in an apartment or some space number in a mobile home park, where you've got half a dozen people tying up, the service and the time of law enforcement personnel on a really frequent basis.
And that's what the nuisance address subcommittee or committee that we have looks at. And we review calls for service, and then what we do is when we find patterns in there of nuisance calls for service, we send the owner of the property a letter saying you need to abate. And if we get another call for service after that, they're sent a bill for $1,000 and for each call for service after that. I mean, we will work with a landlord who's willing to work with us, but on the flip side of the coin, we expect landlords to take care of their property and ensure that their tenants are orderly. And the city has spent an immense amount of time and resources recently trying to educate landlords on that. And this would include people who run mobile home facilities and apartments like Lancaster Garden Apartments and everything else. We are really encouraging those landlords or even landlords of single-family dwellings to come to these so that they can learn how to get tenants in there who don't cause problems for them, and then put them at risk of being fined by the city.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments from commissioners? Okay, thank you very much. And we do have one speaker card regarding crime stats. Mr. Dave Aber.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that number 7 would be better served under public safety.
Okay,
So make that 7 on that one.
will do. Okay, we'll move on to item 2, arrest statistics. Sergeant Kreger.
Good morning. First, I'd like to apologize for not having our normal presentation. We had a slight problem with our computer system, and the data wasn't available for today. So I'll take this opportunity to just highlight a couple of the special teams that we have at the station and the activity that they had for the month of June. First, I'd like to start off with the burglary suppression team. For the month of June, burglary team had 45 felony arrests, 11 misdemeanor arrests, $5,000 in stolen property recovered, service of 7 search warrants, and 11 parole and probation searches. Our land cap team equally as active with 23 felony arrests for the month of June, 42 misdemeanor arrests, and 4 guns recovered. Again, several search warrants. One of the key things I'd like to point out about both of these teams, we're actually utilizing these maps that are provided by Mr. Cobalt to deploy our resources and focus on these areas, the high-density areas of crime. It's very helpful to our teams. It's been very successful. For example, he pointed out the week 6/12 to 6/18 with the low Part 1 crime rate. Coincidentally, we had a large-scale operation that was conducted by LandCap and the Berg team, as well as deputies from Palmdale Station. We had 65 deputies involved in this operation. It was conducted on 6/15. It resulted in 17 felony arrests, 28 misdemeanor arrests, seizure of 85 marijuana plants, a large-scale marijuana grow, 300 ecstasy tablets. So very successful operation, and it just happened to be during that same time frame where we had such a low Part 1 crime rate for that week. Another operation that they conducted was a curfew sweep, which resulted in 67 juveniles being cited for curfew and 2 arrests being made. So, any questions?
Just a comment, commend yourself and the city and the Palmdale Station as well, and I notice our Captain Bob Denham, thank you for being here, and thanks for the partnership that we have. It definitely is making a difference and is reflected in the stats that have been shared, so great job. Captain Johnson as well. Thank you.
Sir, can I just add one other thing to one other team that's been very valuable for the last 8 weeks? It's funded by the county, but it's really been assisting us, and that's the Violent Crime Suppression Team. We refer to it as VSET. And the reason they've been able to help us so much within the city is because their approach this year has been really in hitting the areas just outlining the city. And they've been working up a lot on G, Avenue D and H, just kind of those inroads and outroads within the city. And then within the past 8 weeks, they've arrested 343 individuals, 100 felonies and 243 misdemeanors. And those are all criminals that were on their way in or just leaving. So that team has been a great asset to us for the last 8 weeks, and we'll have them for another 6 weeks. So
Great. Thank you. Okay, we do have one speaker card regarding item 2. David Grajeda.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's my first meeting here at the Criminal Justice. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak. I would just hope that we're making, the department is making quality arrests instead of just, like a big amount, because I've noticed that a lot of the times the arrest is going up. Alternative to arrest, this is your book. This is what you guys teach people in school, so I've been reading that. The alternative to arrest, is taking an approach for first-time drug violators, police, and village officers are dealing with local and caught drinking, possessing small amounts of marijuana, sitting down, and their parents, lawyers, to work out punishment that fit the crime. Chief said, I would rather that the first-time offenders work off their fannies doing community service, preferably alongside a police officer. So I would hope that, Lancaster could take the approach of, like, not being as aggressive to people that are abusing drugs, and put more emphasis on the drug dealers themselves, the ones that are selling the ecstasy and the ones that are selling, the cocaine and those people, like, take it easy on the drug abusers, because they just have a problem. Most of them aren't really violent people. They're just looking for their fix, so to speak. I've watched a couple of these meetings, and I've seen a meeting from like last year. The guy said quality arrest is what you guys should be making. I feel that I know people that have been arrested that shouldn't have been arrested. That was a provoked situation by the sheriff department for one of these noise complaints that they've had. Instead of allowing these people to have their privacy, and the sheriffs knowing their constitutional rights to give them that and not go into their house without permission. I've seen them go into somebody's house, jump over the fence because there were a bunch of kids partying, and they provoked the situation enough to where a person that was of legal age, that was drinking, that was intoxicated, I believe, inside the house, to come outside, try to film him, and he gets arrested. He gets, tasered and thrown in jail, and he's facing time in prison. Not because he provoked the situation. He wanted just to stay in the house and just, enjoy his night. But when sheriffs are jumping over the wall and encroaching on people's right to have fun or whatever, and not cooperate with the sheriffs as in answer the door and know their rights to say, you guys have to stay out, or we don't want you guys coming in.
Thank you. Item number 3, California Highway Patrol update. Captain Hoos, welcome.
I want to take this time to thank the Commission for my invitation to be involved in this. I'm being transferred down to our Detective Bureau. Detectives are up and down in the Hollywood area, and I'll be welcoming in a moment our new captain coming in. But this commission is incredible for information, for being proactive, for helping me to deploy my resources throughout the Antelope Valley. And so I would have to thank you for all you're doing for the state of California, in addition to Lancaster, to make my job that much easier. So thank you.
Well, on behalf of the commission, we'd like to thank you for your time here in the Antelope Valley and for all that you've contributed as well. And we wish you the best in your future endeavors also. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to recognize again, as you did, Bobby Denham from Palmdale, who's made my job that much more effective, and Bob Johnson, because our partnership is incredible. It is as if we have one entire law enforcement department that's all focused on the same goal. And in that, I would like to welcome and have him come speak half an hour would probably be enough for, just like I did when I first got here, if you remember, Captain Steve Urea from the San Bernardino area. Captain? I told him keep it down below 45 minutes.
Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity. And I was told several times that I had some really big shoes to fill. Thanks, Todd. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. This is a unique experience for me in dealing with a situation like this, and quite frankly, I'm very excited about it. I see a lot of things that already are starting to trigger memories for about half of my career. I've been with the department for about 24 years. Half of my career has been spent on vehicle theft-related crimes as an investigator, and then most recently as a commander of the Auto Theft Task Force in San Bernardino County. And what I can bring to the table, hopefully, and if the agencies locally are up for it, any type of assistance with trends in auto theft. There's a lot of new trends going on. I saw some stats up here in relation to larceny and vehicle thefts, and not necessarily the car itself, but also breaking in to vehicles. And it brought to mind very quickly, I think everybody here probably has one of the key fobs that opens and closes your doors. And whether or not you may be aware of it, there are people that, especially during the holidays, will sit around the parking lots and they will steal that signal from you. And when you go in to do more shopping, they open up your car and take it. And a lot of these, I saw a lot of stats in regards to cars that not necessarily think they might have left their cars unlocked, but in reality, there's another way of stealing it. But I'm excited, look forward to working with everybody here, and thanks again for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and again, welcome.
Thank you.
We did have a speaker card with regards to item number 3 as well. David Grajeda.
Good morning. Okay, I just woke up, so my mind has to wake up too. Welcome. Be careful, because people do leave their doors unlocked. I've had a lot of friends that go around checking doors to see if they're unlocked, to see what they can steal. You know, I do know a lot of people that do that. So that is a problem, you know. Let's see. You're the captain of the highway patrol, correct? That's what you are now. Okay. Well, you guys are giving a lot of tickets on the freeway. You know, I don't think you need to be that aggressive on people trying to go to and from work. You know, if you guys see a stolen car, then I can understand. You know, but I've heard on the council, the city council, that tickets gone up 400%, something like that. I believe you made that statement, Mr. Chris. So, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like you guys are being aggressive in a situation where you don't really need to be in order to, I guess, create revenue. But that's just my opinion. So I would like to see, hopefully, you know, common sense when it comes to the highway, you know, and not be so out to get people for speeding, you know, going into and from work. So, you know, I would like to see, hopefully, people coming in here, or people that I run into not upset that they got a ticket because they're only like 5 miles over the speed limit. So, thank you.
Chairman, may I respond?
Yes.
We have focused enforcement on the 14, significant enforcement over these last 6 months through an Officer of Traffic Safety grant. And with that, we've had a reduction of around 70% of injury collisions and 100% reduction of fatals. Our fatal collisions went from an average trend of 5 over a 3-year period, but 5 fatalities on the 14 freeway each year, and at this point we have none. And the other side note would have to be that the California Highway Patrol citations, they don't receive any funding or finance from the citations they issue.
Thank you.
I'd like just on the same note, as the chairman of the emergency department at AV Hospital and the receiving trauma center, I really appreciate the aggressiveness that you guys exercise on the freeway. And when we see the products of people who haven't been driving effectively, it's difficult for everybody. So I appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, District Attorney Update. Mr. Stephen Franklin.
Thank you. For the month of June, the Antelope Valley, which obviously encompasses Palmdale as well, but we filed 377 complaints, 701 informations were filed, and 110 filings were declined. That's on the felony side. We are the two comparable counties are Norwalk, that had 508 filings, and Compton had the most at 582. We actually filed more informations than either Compton or Norwalk. On the misdemeanor end, we filed 749 misdemeanors for the month of June, and declined 96. approximately 100. Finally, at the last meeting, I had indicated that there was a big theft ring, an auto theft ring, that we obtained a conviction on. That was People versus List and Irwin. And they were both sentenced. List was given 10 years in state prison. Actually, it could have been much worse for him because he was facing in the mid-20s. And Ms. Irwin could have done also substantial time in prison, but the judge placed her on probation. But again, we are taking the grand theft auto and the theft, which is always talked about at these meetings, the grand theft auto and larcenies from vehicles. We do take those seriously. Would like to have seen higher sentences on from the judge on that particular case, being that it was such a large theft ring. But still, 10 years state prison on the one individual is something. And and again, the last thing, I again would want to recognize our district attorney, Kelly Cromer, who obtained a conviction on the Barker case, which I was impressed even more when I saw what happened on the verdict in the Casey Anthony case. And this is a very similar case, and Kelly just did a bang-up job and obtained a first-degree murder conviction on that. So barring any questions, that concludes my portion.
Questions, comments? Okay, we do have one speaker card relative to this item. Mr. David Aber.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commission, staff, and citizens. After hearing Mr. Franklin speak, I believe he said 749 misdemeanors were filed this month and there was 96 declines. It's my understanding when speaking with Mr. Franklin that I guess the criteria for filing these cases is whether they got a winnable case, which makes a lot of sense. And Mr. Franklin and I have communicated quite a bit in the last 6 months with respect to the assault and battery committed upon me by the mayor on September 28th. And with my understanding, which I think Mr. Franklin would agree from our conversations, but I'll let him speak for himself, that a winnable case is something they don't want to waste the court's time and resources, which makes sense. Well, the mayor has both confessed to the crime, which was confirmed by the captain of the Sheriff's Department, that he did commit a battery upon me, assault and battery, and on the Channel 7 newscast where he admits also on September 30th that he in fact attacked me. Okay? He appoints all you, and we're in a town where we got a situation that's very serious. I can't seem to get the police report, the complete police report. The captain that's now in provided me with, a few pages, but there's a summary to that report, which I'm not really sure what the mayor has to hide or whoever. It doesn't appear to be the Sheriff's Department because they turned over the report, and it was my understanding I have to deal with Mr. Franklin to get this report. And even though I kind of know what's in that report because some of it was read to me, it's time for that report to come forthwith. And we need to take steps in holding the mayor accountable for what he's done. I do have to commend Mr. Christ, who I believe made an inquiry into this situation before this very commission to Mr. Franklin. But he depicted a situation where it was a pushing incident where both people were involved in a shoving contest, when in fact, for the record, the mayor walked up to me in the gym on that morning. He swore at me, pushed me into the glass of the racquetball court, and assumed a fighting position. Now, Mr. Vieira, you're the superintendent of schools. I'm sure if you did this out in public, it would be unacceptable, or you, Mr. Greer, or you, Mr. Capel, or any of you. If your behavior was as such, you would be punished and held accountable. It's time for the mayor to be held accountable. It's time for the district attorney's office to file this case. We can no longer allow the mayor to run over the top of the citizens. We're all created equal in this room. Nobody's above anybody. Thank you for your time.
Item number 5, report on neighborhood impact program. Commissioner Harris?
Neighborhood Impact is a collaboration of churches that continues to work with the city of Lancaster in partnership with them. And the whole idea is to try to impact the neighborhoods that we have adopted, that the city has asked us to adopt. And to that extent, we try to work with the kids and with the families and try to help them to make some positive choices. And so to that end, I want to give a report in terms of what's happened in some of the houses over the past month. In June, there was an art month, and so what happened is that the kids did art projects. They invited the parents to the art show, and so they were really excited about having their parents come, take a look at their art, and so again, it just provides a whole family atmosphere. And the other thing that we've started is a classical ballet class for the girls, and that has gone over very well. The Linda Verdi House is going to be opening on August the 13th. It's a grand opening, so we're really excited about doing that. The second thing that I wanted to tell you about is the sports league. It went off very well. So having 115 kids, I think I reported, and having 10 teams for that sports league with basketball. Because it was so successful, we are on to flag football, and that's going to be starting in September. So we're really excited about that. But I think we're more excited about the fact that we had one parent come up and say, because of Neighborhood Impact and the activities that we're providing for her son and also the sports league, her son is veering away from the gangs, and that's what we want to hear. The third item that I wanted to bring to you is we also work in collaboration with Antelope Valley Partners for Health, and they provide education to the families. And so some of the topics that they've had, or some of the events they've had, is a mother-daughter night where they talked about abstinence and STDs with the mothers and the daughters. They hosted a workshop on diabetes. They had another workshop on empowerment and awareness, another workshop caring for loved ones that are incarcerated, and they are getting ready to open up the Wellness House in the Mariposa area on July the 27th. So they're moving very well and working in partnership with us. We're doing well with that. And the other thing that we're prepping for right now is the workday that we do in October. So in October, we try to get 1,000 people to go out and make an impact in the communities that we have adopted. This year, what we decided to do, rather than, normally we paint houses at no charge in the communities that we serve, but what we're going to do this year instead is we're going to focus on the schools. We've had the schools call us and ask us if we could just concentrate on the schools, and so we're happy to do that. We're going to attempt to paint Mariposa School in its entirety, because that's one of the neighborhoods that we've adopted. We started with Sunnydale School and didn't get it quite finished last year, so we're going to try to complete that, and then we're going to try to see what it is that we can do at Antelope Valley High School. And so we're very excited about it. This is one day that we can't wait to make an impact in the community, and so that's what we're going to do this year. We're going to be doing that on Saturday, October the 8th.
Well, we sure appreciate all your contributions from the community and the schools as well, so thank you very much.
That's great.
Commissioner Harris, who do they contact if they want to sponsor some of those activities?
You know, they could call myself directly, or Chris Johnson, who is the pastor at Grace Chapel.
I know that Commissioner Fuller was instrumental in getting some of the basketball uniforms and basketballs through the Lancaster West Rotary, and they also provided the computers for one of the homes. So if they can help, if you contact him.
You know, we always need supplies. There's no question about that. We need paintbrushes. We're going to need supplies like that. We are going to do 4 homes because we had already started the process. And so we need paint for the homes. There's always things that we need in terms of, so thank you for bringing that up. So.
We do have one speaker card on this item, David Grajeda.
I'd like to commend you for the stuff you're doing in the community. That's, education is the best, let me see, how can I put this? Education is the best to prevent something like crime, like going out and seeking gang, drug abuse, and knowledge is power. And, having a venue for the kids, for families to go and function as a community and is great. Knowledge is power, punishment is fear. So, and I have a daughter now, and hopefully, I want her to seek out that kind of thing, where she can go have a place and she can let out her, if she's ADHD or, her hyperactivity, because I know I am. I'm really hyper, and I suffer from ADHD. And, if I had a venue like that growing up, but I was too much of a pain in the butt to go seek out that kind of stuff. But if I had a venue like that and it emphasized, education, and it was something that I really wanted to take a part of, then it would have been beneficial to myself, instead of the road I left behind. That's where I read the check registry. I seen the ballet classes. I seen the bill. I was like, well, who's taking ballet classes and fencing classes? And now I know why. So I just commend you for these sort of programs, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
You're welcome.
Items 6 and 7 with the Business Watch Subcommittee update and Public Safety update. I don't believe do we have an update?
No, Mr. Dorico's not here today. It would be appropriate to defer that until next meeting.
All right, then we'll defer both of those to our next meeting. And public business from the floor, non-agendized items. Okay. And we do have a couple of cards on that area. We'll start with David Paul.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, good morning. I'd like to start by thanking Captain Hoos for the enforcement on the 14. There's nothing more aggravating than watching someone blow by at 80, 90 miles an hour recklessly. Reckless driving seems to drive me crazy. Captain, thank you for the enforcement on my street. The traffic enforcement, one of my neighbors told me you were out there, and they might have even mentioned Highway Patrol was there. I didn't see it, but I appreciate that. If people could just learn to drive more considerately, this would be a better world. That's one of my favorite premises. I was at a mediation roundtable, and I found a young lady. It's the Alternatives to Violence project, and I asked around. This project has been around since 1975. It says it's in 32 states, and I was embarrassed that I didn't know about it. The Tapestry Commission, which will meet tonight, we're still trying to work out a mechanism by which the community can come together and air their grievances and learn coping skills. And Alternatives to Violence has a complete program that works not only in the prisons, I understand, but in the community, and I'm looking to pursue that. Commissioner Capel, I spoke with you earlier, and you know a little bit about it, and when I'm done, if you could just speak a little bit to the efficacy of this program, I would appreciate it, because I'm trying to bring an awareness of it for all of us, so we can use something like this, or it specifically, to implement it in our community to help They have a new workshop coming out, Cultivating the Peace Within Us, and that's, I think, would help anybody. I'd like to see our Tapestry Commission or the Criminal Justice Commission offer scholarships to local citizens who might be prime candidates to participate in this. Have a little too much anger and not enough willingness to work through these problems together. But thank you very much, and it was wonderful to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And from the floor, Mr. David Aber.
Morning again. With respect to the Sheriff's Department and the captain, they've done a really good job with the cleaning up the over there by McDonald's on Avenue K and 12th Street West, but it seems as though there's the problem's coming back a little bit. I know the lady that was there, she's not gone, and a lot of the other people were standing in the middle of the street panhandling on that little turn that was really dangerous. So if they want to, note that. There's the one gentleman that's out there, it's pretty tall and abusive and threatening and using bad language and stuff, so if they could get that. But wanted to retouch up on what I was speaking about. With all due respect to Mr. Franklin, with respect to a winnable case, I understand that that's probably the number one priority, resources and whether they can win a case. Well, I believe when the district attorney's office rejected the case involving the mayor attacking me, they maybe didn't see the Channel 7 news broadcast where the mayor confessed. And the bottom line is very simple. If you've got a confession, I think you pretty much can get a conviction or work out some kind of deal. I'm not standing up here saying I want to see the mayor arrested and taken to jail and put in prison, but I think the mayor should be charged and held accountable for the crime he committed. And I'm sure that he probably doesn't have an extensive criminal record, and that, that it would all be, work out just fine for him, and that he would, understand that you can't attack citizens. This can't happen. Mr. Greer doesn't attack people. The doctor, I've been in the hospital with Mr. Brown before. He doesn't attack the patients. And if he did, he would be held accountable. And the bottom line is we need accountability. I've been here 40 plus years, and this is unheard of. If anybody in this room has heard of a case where, somebody in Congress or senators or mayors have attacked somebody, please inform me, because it's not happened. And if we want to stand proud, and the people that serve on this commission and the people that serve on the other commissions and on the councils want to be respected and their integrity is something, well, I don't think you're puppets. So the puppeteer, shouldn't be pulling the strings and making the rest of the people that serve on these councils look foolish because he's above the law, because he isn't above the law, and we all know that. And it's time for the district attorney's office to step up to the plate and take actions and prosecute and file this case. And provide me with the reports. What's in the reports that we're afraid of? On the police report it says not for release to the press. It's time for us to not be afraid of what's in the report. It's time for the mayor who has confessed to this crime to be held accountable. Thank you very much.
Mr. Vera? Yeah. I had a speaker card on number 7, public safety.
There is no, we deferred all items 6 and 7 to the next meeting because there's no report coming forward from staff.
Thank you.
Okay?
Commissioner Vieira?
Yes.
If I can just comment on Mr. Aber's comments. We've been through this, not that, there's some limit of the number of times someone can address something. I assume it's a public forum. But I recall the last time these same comments were made, my comments remain unchanged about that matter. And certainly I don't have any say-so, but you're bringing this to this commission. And my comments are that I still believe that the district attorney's office for Los Angeles County is aggressive about pursuing cases against anyone that they believe that they have a case brought to them that is, you say, winnable. I see them lose cases too. So I certainly don't think the only case that they decide to prosecute and move forward on are guaranteed 100% winning cases. I don't know that those necessarily always exist. And that starts from the top down. Steve Cooley used to be the deputy district attorney up here. There wasn't anything that was less than aggressive about his pursuit of prosecution when he was here than I think it is today when he heads LA County. So I don't know, and I think this was one of my comments the last time, I don't know about the merits of your case, but in as much as you say you have brought this, I know it's been before this commission several times. It sounds like you've met with or talked to the district attorney for our area here, Mr. Franklin, and you've also had contact with this sheriff's captain and the prior one. At least I've heard you make those comments. I don't know if those meetings or conversations have taken place, but you say they have. I cannot imagine that a district attorney's office that is known for being aggressive about pursuing cases, and LA County Sheriff's Department, which is equally aggressive about pursuing cases. I just can't imagine. It wasn't more than a few weeks ago that there was an unfortunate day for LA County Sheriff where Lee Baca had to actually let a half a dozen sworn members go for conduct that he didn't think was acceptable for the Sheriff's Department, and it involved, I think, some kind of physical altercation off duty somewhere. So if you've got a sheriff heading a department like that, and you've got a district attorney's office like you've got here, I understand your right to come here and bring this to this commission. Number one, this commission doesn't have the legal authority to bring charges or pursue matters like that. We certainly can look into something that doesn't sound like it's working right, but other than your allegation, you've met with the people that head these departments, and I would encourage you to continue to try to do something there to the extent that you really think you have a matter to move forward on. But typically the merits of the case almost always are a function of where the case is going to go and how. In some cases that means they go nowhere, and for a reason. So.
And just somewhat of a follow-up, just a process point, with regards to the agenda, you spoke to that on item 4 and then again on item 7. You can speak on an agendized or a non-agendized, but not both. So just for future reference, you get one bite at the apple with one item. So, any other comments, questions from commissioners, statements? Okay. Hearing nothing, this meeting stands adjourned with our next meeting on the 10th of August at 10 a.m. Oh, I'm sorry. You did have a speaker card for non-agendized. Come on up, Mr. Grajeda. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay. If I push the mayor in any way, if I even probably touch the mayor, I guarantee you the DA would bring charges on me.
Excuse me for a second. That item was spoken on in number 4. It was an agendized item. This is for non-agendized
This is public comment. I'm allowed to make statements and criticize, and according to the Ralph M. Brown Act. I'm well familiar with what I can and cannot do in regards to my public statements.
Excuse me, but this is non-agendized. These are for things that are not on the agenda.
This is public comment.
What you're speaking to is an agendized item.
I'm speaking on his behalf. I'm speaking on the man right here bringing up his public comment saying that they're not looking into that matter. And I can agree with that. I don't think they are. Because if I touched the mayor in any way, shape, or form, they would arrest me and I would be in jail. For me even speaking too much, sometimes the sheriff's called. So, another issue I wanted to point out was DUI/driver's license checkpoint. Well, that is not a real checkpoint. Okay, it's a DUI, a sobriety checkpoint. And case law, Ingersoll versus Palmer, you guys can't even ask for a driver's license. It states there, and it's very clear, you can only approach a vehicle and ask the driver whether or not they've been drinking and check for signs of impairment. Not whether or not they have a driver's license. So the people that are getting their cars impounded for 30 days because their license was suspended, probably for not paying a bill, then, I have issues with that. And I have issues with 20 vehicles getting towed and not one DUI getting cited. So if you're going to have a license checkpoint, because that's what it is, it's not DUI/driver's license checkpoint, what you guys are doing. Have a driver's license checkpoint, but in the United States, they don't have those. Okay, that's unconstitutional. Just so you guys know this is what's going on. You guys have explorers in there, shining lights in people's faces, asking everybody in there for their IDs, taking people in for warrants when they have no right to even ask them for their IDs. Okay, they're violating their constitutional rights. and what's called the USC 1983 lawsuit, and it's in your book, which I was surprised to see it was actually in your book, is where an individual can sue the person behind the badge as the individual. As in, if you violated my constitutional rights, I can bring a lawsuit under 42 USC section 1983 where I can sue you and go after your bank account, your house, and I can also go all the way up to the captain, even probably to the mayor, under vicarious liability, where I can sue the boss for failure to supervise and failure to train. Anyways, David Grajeda, thank you.
Commissioner, comments?
I guess I can't resist one more. I guess, Mr. Grajeda, a couple of your comments. Number one, I truly always enjoy seeing people from the community show up to these meetings and participate. It's your right, and it's not just your right, it should be a duty to be involved in your community to some extent. You know, you mentioned you had a daughter, I think, that you're raising here. You know, first of all, it's always nice to see a young man come to the podium and take his hat off when he speaks, and thank you very much for that. You get an A+ there. Your comment that you have friends that check doors and see if anyone's home to see if they can steal.
Not home, just cars. People that would
Excuse me.
to a house that's really.
I'll stipulate that. I stand corrected. They're checking cars to see if they can steal things.
But yeah, I know a lot of people.
You had your turn. I'll have mine for just a moment. That's an additional concern. You know, if you're here for the meeting, and you saw one of the concerns in this community is the number of Part 1 crimes, and specifically in those Part 1 crimes, larceny of vehicles in driveways. And we talk about whether or not people leave them unlocked. You know, obviously it makes sense if you've got an asset that's worth maybe $10,000 or $20,000 or more, you should have it someplace safe. But a lot of people feel like when they take care of their home and pay their bills and buy these things and work hard, they should be safe in their driveway. You're concerned about whether or not someone has a flashlight shined in the car and they're asked for ID. That may be a concern. I don't know how high up the ladder it ranks compared to the guy who thinks he should be able to park his car in his driveway and not have somebody shine a light in it, find an unlocked door, and take. Again, I didn't interrupt you when you spoke. If you'd please.
You're trying to make a point of something that you can't make a point with. That is.
If I can go on here, thank you. I didn't interrupt you. So I guess, you know, and you talked about the CHP and they write a lot of tickets for 5 miles over. I can personally tell you that I have no impunity from receiving those, and I wish I had one that was only 5 miles an hour. Typically, if I pick something like that up, it's probably more than 5 miles an hour. But there are people that do care how fast people are driving up and down this freeway. It is important. People get hurt, people get killed, innocent people. And so how fast somebody drives and whether or not law enforcement gets called to your home or a friend's home and they get arrested, typically I'm going to guess that radio car didn't end up there just all on their own. There's probably another citizen who felt like he had some rights too, probably right next door, and he had them come out for some reason, or she did. And so I guess I appreciate your enthusiasm. I just think a lot of it seems to be misplaced. You know, you seem to be very articulate. You've memorized and understand some Supreme Court cases. That's terrific. There's some general things in the community, especially if you're raising a daughter, I would think you'd want to get equally familiar with. That's all.
Other comments?
Yeah, let me make a comment. Mr. Grajeda, you bring up the fact that there is there's a misconception out there that people that have the drug problem are not violent and not a problem to the community.
Most.
But yet, in your next breath, you say your friends also open doors, unlock doors.
Drug addicts. I have a lot of friends that are
Okay, I'm a parole agent, and I deal with these people every day. I deal with them every day, and I can tell you right now that the drug problem out here is very extensive. However, there is a huge network out here in our community for all drug users. Most drug users don't go to jail. They are in Prop 36 or in all kinds of programs. It is probably 6 or 7 times that you get caught with that before you actually go to jail.
You go to prison.
Go to prison.
Yeah, but see, when an addict, they're always gonna
Your addicts.
do more drugs.
Well, this is where this comes from too. An addict does not have a job, and an addict.
Not necessarily true.
Well, an addict normally does not have a job and needs money, so they burglarize houses and they steal cars. And that is the problem in our community. So yes, we do target people that are on drugs because that is the problem that we have out here that escalates to other problems. Okay, so but there is a misconception out here that hold on, there is a misconception out here that drug users go to jail in the first time. They don't. There are many programs out there that we utilize, including the ankle bracelets.
My friend went to jail for marijuana, okay? Not like a week ago, but not a week ago, like a month ago, okay?
Mr. Commissioner, can you tell them this is Commissioner comment time, not a time for debate?
Which means I get to talk. Okay. All right. The bottom line is people don't go to jail for that. They get released and then they go to programs. That's an intervention that we use. Okay. Again, I'm talking. Okay. The law enforcement out here is going to target people that are using drugs because it is a problem out here. People that use drugs burglarize homes and they steal cars. Okay. That's all I have.
Any other comments from any commissioners?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I appreciate the debate. I think that's what the commission is all about. Obviously, we're going to be looking at crime statistics, and law enforcement is certainly a big part of what we do in this community to control crime. The other part of it is the prevention side of it, which we spend a tremendous amount of time talking about in this commission. Programs such as Neighborhood Impact really, I think, gets to the core of the matter, which is that it takes a community. That's really when you stop crime, you're going to see your arrest statistics go down when people stop committing crimes. So the way that works is communities get involved, they care, and there's peer pressure. So when you talk about, or when anyone speaks of people that they know who are committing crimes, and it's a fact of life, once that becomes there are alternatives, and let's talk about it, either reporting them or helping them to see a better way to do things. The quicker the crime goes down, and less conversation we have to have about the number of arrests.
Okay, thank you very much. And that concludes our commissioner comments, and we stand adjourned 11:25 with our next meeting on the 10th of August, 10 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you.